At my birthday party in a little cafe on March 1st, my mom leaned toward my brother and whispered, "While everyone's here, go and change the locks." I heard it. And in that 1 second, everything I believed about family shattered. Stick with me while I share my story. And if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. The cafe smelled of cinnamon and espresso, the kind of cozy that makes you think everything is fine. My friends laughed, clinking glasses. Candles flickered across the frosting of a cake my mom insisted on ordering herself. I smiled, thanked everyone, tried to enjoy it. My mom, Martha, sat across from me, polished as always, her voice dripping with polite affection. She had this way of making every moment seem like a performance, even birthdays. My brother, Noah, sat beside her, quiet and distracted, scrolling his phone whenever she wasn't looking. It was during the lull between the cake cutting and the photos that I heard it. My mom leaned in close to him, her lips barely moving, and said those words. "While everyone's here, go and change the locks." The air left my body. I didn't even know what she meant at first, not really, but something inside me went cold. She didn't see me notice. No one did. I just sat there, holding my fork, pretending to smile while my mind raced through possibilities I didn't want to believe. I remember staring at her hands, perfectly manicured, tapping the table like she was keeping time to some secret rhythm. My mother always liked control. After my dad passed away, it was like she needed to grip everything tighter. The house, the money, even our emotions. But this? What did she mean by changing locks? My house. Her house? It didn't make sense. Noah avoided eye contact for the rest of the night. When I tried to joke with him, he muttered something about being tired. I brushed it off, trying to convince myself I misheard. Maybe she said check the locks. Maybe I was paranoid. I even laughed too loud when one of my friends made a toast, just to drown out my own thoughts. After the gifts and awkward hugs, everyone drifted out into the chilly evening. My mom hugged me last, her perfume thick and sweet, her voice soft in my ear. "You should rest, honey," she said. "You've had a long day." Her tone was syrupy but final, like she was closing a chapter one didn't know I was in. When I finally sat alone in my car, the cafe lights glowing behind me, I replayed her whisper over and over. "Go and change the locks." My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I didn't know it yet, but that sentence was the start of the cruelest birthday gift I'd ever receive. The drive home felt endless. The road was dark and slick, headlights smearing across the windshield as Evelyn's thoughts tangled. Her mother's whisper replayed in her mind like a splinter she couldn't pull out. Every mile closer to the house made her chest tighten. She tried to breathe, to convince herself it was nothing, but dread sat heavy in her stomach. When she pulled into the driveway, Noah's car was parked in its usual spot. The porch light was on. Everything looked normal, but something felt wrong. Evelyn grabbed her keys, stepped into the cold, and hurried to the door. She slipped the key in, turned it, and it stopped. She tried again. The metal jammed halfway. A slow, hollow click echoed inside, but the lock wouldn't move. Her pulse spiked. She jiggled the handle, twisted the knob harder, until the metal rattled in her grip. She stepped back, blinking at the familiar curtains behind the glass. Inside, her jacket still hung on the hook. A book she'd left open on the couch sat where she'd been reading that morning. Nothing had changed except the lock. She knocked once, then harder. "No!" Her voice broke against the door. No response. She tried again, louder. "Mom? Noah?" Still silence. The only sound was the faint hum of a heater running inside her own house. A curtain fluttered across the street. Mrs. Langford, her elderly neighbor, peered from her porch, hugging a shawl around her shoulders. Their eyes met briefly before she looked away, pretending not to see. The humiliation burned deeper than the cold. Evelyn called Noah. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Then her mother. Nothing. The third time, the call rang twice before it cut off mid-ring. They knew she was there. They were ignoring her. She pressed her forehead against the door, whispering, "Please," but no one answered. Her phone buzzed with a low battery warning. The night air bit through her coat, sharp and merciless. Minutes blurred into an hour. Eventually, she gave up knocking and walked back to her car. The leather seat felt like ice. She turned on the heater, but it barely helped. Her reflection in the rearview mirror looked hollow, makeup smudged, eyes wide with disbelief. She stared at the house through the windshield, its warm light glowing in betrayal. Her house. The place she'd scrubbed, decorated, made her own after her father's death. Now it stood there, occupied, locked against her like she was a stranger. Her phone finally died. She pulled her coat tighter and leaned back, forcing herself not to cry. The cafe whisper echoed again, cruel and clear. Go and change the locks. It hadn't been a metaphor. It had been an order. By the time dawn crept up, frost spread across the windows, sealing her in a thin shell of white. That was when the truth settled in. They'd done it. Her mother and brother had actually locked her out of her own life. Morning came without rest. Evelyn's eyes burned from the cold and from everything she couldn't process. She drove straight to the library, clutching the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. The building's warmth hit her as soon as she walked in, but it didn't calm her shaking hands. Before she could set down her bag, her manager, Karen, called her into the office. There was that look, the kind people use when they're about to deliver something uncomfortable. Karen folded her hands and said, Evelyn, I got a call from your mother last night. She told us you've been struggling and need time off. Evelyn blinked, trying to catch up. Struggling? Karen nodded, avoiding her eyes. She said you're not well. HR approved a temporary leave. Effective immediately. The words didn't sink in at first. She laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. I didn't request leave. I'm fine. You can't just. Karen sighed. It's already processed. Take some time, okay? The conversation ended there. Evelyn walked out in a daze, the weight of what her mother had done pressing down harder with each step. Her access badge didn't work at the exit gate, deactivated already. She stood in the parking lot, holding it, realizing how fast her mother could make her disappear. Back in her car, she opened her phone and started digging. First her bank app, nothing strange. Then her emails, a few unread notices from the property management company. She opened one. The subject line, ownership transfer confirmation. Her heart stuttered. She scrolled further. There were more, dated months ago. She dialed the property manager's office. A calm voice answered. Hi, this is Evelyn Kramer. I'm calling about my house on Birchwood Lane. Oh, the woman said after a pause, typing in the background. That property is under Martha Kramer's ownership. Are you a relative? Evelyn gripped the phone tighter. It was mine. There was a moment of silence, then the woman replied carefully. The transfer was filed in November. Everything looked legitimate. You might want to speak to the county recorder's office if there's a dispute. The call ended and Evelyn sat frozen. November. 4 months before her birthday. For months they'd had this planned. She drove to the post office, requested every piece of mail redirected from her address, and sat in her car again, flipping through envelopes. Insurance, utilities, a bank statement, all listing her mother's name. The pieces lined up into a shape she didn't want to see. Her mother hadn't just locked her out of a house. She'd erased her from it on paper first. The whisper at the cafe wasn't a moment of madness. It was the final step in a plan already sealed by signatures. Evelyn leaned back, the silence of the car pressing in. Her entire life, stolen, documented, and filed away under someone else's name. Evelyn sat in the dim light of her basement apartment, papers spread across the table, trying to piece together the why. Every document she found circled back to the same thing, control. But there had to be more. People didn't just erase family out of houses for no reason. She stared at her father's old handwriting on an envelope she'd saved after the funeral, the ache of his absence pressing against her ribs. That was when it clicked. The insurance. He'd mentioned it in passing once, saying it would make sure both of you are set. Her mother had nodded, promising it would be shared equally. Evelyn had never questioned it. She trusted her. Now she opened her banking app, scrolling through old notifications she'd ignored back then, account transfers, deposits that never reached her name. She'd assumed it was delayed paperwork, or her mom handling the details while she was drowning in grief. But the more she read, the more it became clear. The money had vanished. Her pulse quickened as she searched for her father's policy details. The payout amount was there, sent directly to Martha Kramer within weeks of his passing. The notes read beneficiaries, spouse and dependents, yet no second transfer ever followed. Not a cent had been moved to her account. She remembered the conversations that followed the funeral, her mother's calm insistence that they take care of things later, and Noah's offhand comments about responsibility and Dad wanting him to handle the big stuff. She hadn't seen it then, but those smirks she brushed off suddenly made sense. He knew. He'd always known. She pushed her hands through her hair, fighting the nausea creeping up her throat. They hadn't just shut her out. They'd drained everything her father meant to leave behind. That money was supposed to keep her secure, a cushion while she rebuilt after losing him. Instead, it became the foundation of her mother's control, the quiet weapon behind every smile. A cold memory surfaced. The week the check should have arrived, her mother had suggested Evelyn take time off work, claiming it was what her father would have wanted. That was when she'd started paying for groceries with credit, when the mortgage name changed, when Noah began avoiding her calls. The signs were all there, hidden in routine kindnesses and quiet delays. She'd mistaken manipulation for care. Every signature, every conversation, every gentle reassurance had been a step toward cutting her out completely. Evelyn leaned back, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding in a rhythm that felt more like resolve than fear. Her father's final gift had been stolen, disguised as family business. And now she understood. The house wasn't the beginning of the betrayal. It was the end of a plan that started the day he was buried. Evelyn stood at the front door, heart hammering against her ribs. The house looked exactly the same, but she felt like she was staring at a stranger's home. Her knuckles hovered for a second before she knocked. Footsteps shuffled on the other side. When the door opened, her mother's face appeared, soft smile, eyes rehearsed. "Evelyn," Martha said in a tone that dripped with concern. "You shouldn't be here, sweetheart. You need rest. You've been under so much stress." The words hit like static. Evelyn clenched her jaw. "You changed the locks," she said flatly. "You told Noah to do it while everyone was at the cafe." Martha sighed, the way she always did when pretending patience. "We didn't want to upset you. After your father died, you haven't been yourself. You need space to heal." From behind her, Noah appeared in the hallway, arms folded, avoiding eye contact. The sight of him standing there, comfortable in her space, made her throat tighten. "That's my house, Noah," she said, voice trembling. "Dad left it to me." He shifted but didn't speak. Martha stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Your father's will wasn't clear. I took responsibility because someone had to. You've been emotional. It's for your own good." Evelyn laughed once, sharp and bitter. "For my own good? You forged papers and stole everything he wanted me to have. How is that for my good?" Her mother's face didn't flinch. "You're confused. You've always struggled with pressure. I told the library you needed time. You'll thank me later." Evelyn's stomach turned. "You called my job?" Martha nodded like she was discussing something trivial. "You can't keep running yourself into exhaustion. We're helping you start over." The calm cruelty in her voice made Evelyn's hands shake. She looked past her mother into the hallway. Her photos were gone from the wall. Her books, her coat erased. Only her father's old armchair remained, a ghost of what once belonged to them both. Evelyn stepped back. "You didn't just take the house," she whispered. "You took everything he trusted you with." Martha's expression hardened, the mask slipping. "He trusted me to keep this family together. And I'm doing that." Evelyn's voice cracked, but she didn't cry. "No, you're keeping control." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Martha reached for the door, her tone clipped. "You need to go, Evelyn. Come back when you're ready to be reasonable." The door clicked shut with finality. Evelyn stood on the porch, staring at the brass handle gleaming in the afternoon light. Her hands were trembling so hard she could barely unlock her car. Driving away, one truth settled like steel in her chest. She couldn't win by begging for fairness. If her family wanted to play with lies and paperwork, she'd use the same language. The next time she came back, it wouldn't be to talk. The basement apartment smelled faintly of dust and paint thinner, but to Evelyn, it was safety. Lila handed her the key with a quiet hug and no questions. That silence was mercy. Evelyn unpacked only what she'd managed to save: her laptop, a box of papers, and her father's photograph. Everything else had been taken, but she still had time. Time was a weapon she could use. She worked nights at the small table beneath a flickering bulb, the hum of the radiator filling the silence. Years of library work had trained her to find order in chaos. She began sorting through every file she could pull: bank records, insurance papers, and the scanned copies she'd backed up long before her mother thought to erase her. Her notes grew into piles. One stack for the will, another for the insurance, another for property documents. The story they told was clear. Signatures altered, transactions rerouted, just enough legal polish to make theft look like love. Each discovery tightened her focus. The grief that once blurred her vision was sharpening into strategy. She traced every payment linked to her father's accounts, following the trail through months of withdrawals. Some were small, others disguised as maintenance fees. But the same two names appeared each time: Martha and Noah Kramer. Her father's trust, siphoned by the people he'd believed would protect her. At night, when the noise above her quieted, Evelyn read through her father's letters. Among them was one she hadn't noticed before, handwritten, folded twice, tucked inside an old envelope from the bank. His words were steady, practical, just like him. "If anything happens to me, make sure Evelyn keeps the house. She'll need roots more than money." The note wasn't legal, but it was proof of intent, his voice on paper, unfiltered by her mother's revisions. She added it to her growing folder labeled Truth. Each page in that folder felt like a brick, building something stronger than the home she'd lost. When her eyes burned from reading, she'd close the laptop and stare at the ceiling, replaying every conversation with her mother. Every condescending word now sounded like a tell. Every delay, every reassurance strategy. It had all been orchestrated long before she realized she was the target. Evelyn started visiting the courthouse archives during lunch hours, combing through public records quietly, leaving no trace. The clerks knew her by face but never by name. She copied deeds, signatures, timestamps, everything that could expose the manipulation. By the end of the second month, the folder had grown thick. It wasn't revenge she was collecting, it was evidence. Proof that she hadn't imagined the betrayal. Proof that she was right. When she finally slid the folder into her bag one night, sealing it shut, her reflection in the window looked different, steady, calculating, unbreakable. The woman her mother dismissed as unstable was gone. In her place stood someone patient, deliberate, and ready to reclaim what was hers. The law office sat above a bakery on Main Street, the smell of sugar mixing with paper and dust. Evelyn hesitated before knocking, the folder clutched to her chest. Clint Foster opened the door himself, older now but still carrying the same calm voice she remembered from her father's meetings. When he saw her name, his expression shifted from polite curiosity to quiet recognition. They sat across from each other in the cramped office, blinds half closed against the winter light. Evelyn spread the documents across his desk without speaking. He scanned them, eyes narrowing at the will copies and property records. After a few minutes, he reached for his reading glasses and leaned closer. "Your dad trusted me with the original paperwork," he said softly. "What your mother filed isn't the same." Evelyn's fingers tightened around her mug. "You're sure?" He nodded. "The signature's off. The witness line's missing one name. Someone retyped this, probably after he passed." He pointed to the notary stamp. "This one was used 2 months after the death date. That alone makes it invalid." Her chest tightened as he spoke. She had prepared herself for proof, but hearing it out loud made it heavier. "So it's fake?" Clint leaned back, folding his hands. "Yes, and that's forgery under state law. But we need to be careful. Don't confront them. If they know you're building a case, they'll bury evidence or claim confusion. We gather first, strike once." Evelyn nodded slowly. "I already have the insurance records and letters. I can find more." "That's good," he said. "Everything helps, emails, handwriting samples, even texts. The goal isn't just to expose the lie, but to show intent." For the next hour, they pieced through the timeline together. He marked dates, circled discrepancies, and highlighted statements that contradicted the supposed will. Each annotation was another thread unraveling the illusion her mother had built. When he finished, he looked up at her. "You've got a solid foundation. It's not just about the house anymore, it's about proving deceit. Your father's intentions matter, and the courts respect that." Evelyn sat back, a small exhale escaping her. For the first time in months, the ground beneath her felt steady. The power her mother had stolen wasn't gone. It had just been waiting for her to claim it properly. But even as she gathered her papers, something cold lingered under the relief. None of this had been accidental. Her mother hadn't acted out of grief or confusion. Every move, each forged line, each lie to her employer, had been deliberate. Clint slid the folder back to her. "Keep everything safe. We'll move quietly until it's time." Evelyn stood, meeting his eyes. "I've been quiet long enough," she said, voice low but steady. He smiled faintly. "Then let's make it count." As she stepped outside, the wind cut through her coat, sharp and clean. For the first time, the chill didn't feel like defeat. It felt like the beginning of a reckoning. The café hadn't changed. Same amber lights, same chalkboard menu, same soft hum of morning conversation. But this time, Evelyn chose the corner table herself. She placed a folder neatly in front of her, checked her watch, and waited. The date on her phone read March 1st. 1 year to the day. The door chimed, and her mother walked in first, wrapped in that familiar coat, followed by Noah, his posture carrying the same easy arrogance. They spotted her and exchanged quick smiles, practiced superior. Martha approached with a tone sweet enough to curdle. "Evelyn, it's good to see you out. I'm proud you reached out." Evelyn kept her expression even. "I thought we should close things properly." Noah slid into the chair across from her, leaning back like he owned the room. "So what is this? Some big heart-to-heart?" Evelyn didn't answer right away. She looked toward the door as Clint Foster stepped inside, briefcase in hand. Her mother's smile faltered for the first time. Clint greeted the table with quiet professionalism, setting a manila envelope down beside Evelyn's coffee cup. "Martha, Noah, I'm representing your late husband's estate and Ms. Kramer's legal interests. We need to review some matters before they proceed to court." The air changed instantly. Martha blinked, caught off guard, her charm cracking. "Court? There's no need for dramatics. Whatever misunderstanding." Clint opened the envelope and slid the papers across the table. "Property fraud. Forgery of a legal will. Misappropriation of funds from a deceased policyholder." He paused, voice calm but firm. "You'll want to read carefully before speaking further." Noah's face reddened. "You can't prove." Evelyn met his eyes, steady. "I already did." He pushed back from the table, muttering under his breath. Martha reached for the papers, but her hands trembled. As she read the first page, the color drained from her face. The hum of the cafe dimmed. People were watching now, forks paused midair, coffee cups frozen halfway up. Evelyn sat still, every word a quiet echo of justice. Her mother's whisper from a year ago flashed through her memory. "Go and change the locks." Now, the same words hung unspoken between them, hollow and stripped of power. Martha tried to compose herself. "You're doing this to your own family?" Evelyn rose from her seat. "You made that choice when you forged his name." Clint gathered the documents, leaving them on the table. "You'll be hearing from the court soon. I'd suggest counsel." Noah muttered a curse, but Martha's voice had gone flat. "You think this makes you strong?" Evelyn looked at her calmly. "No, it makes me free." She turned, walked toward the exit, and felt every eye follow her. As she stepped outside into the cold March air, the wind carried the same scent of roasted coffee and betrayal. But this time, it didn't sting. It smelled like closure. The verdict came on a gray morning, the kind that blurred time and sound. Evelyn sat in the courtroom, hands clasped tightly in her lap, listening as the judge read through the findings. The forged signatures, the altered notary stamps, the false transfer dates, each detail laid bare under oath. Clint's calm voice guided the evidence, every line of testimony stitching together what her mother had tried to erase. When the judgment was delivered, it was quiet but final. The property, the insurance remainder, and the recorded deed were to revert to their original designation. Her father's intended inheritance for his daughter. The forged documents were invalid. Martha Kramer and Noah Kramer faced formal investigation for fraud and misrepresentation. Evelyn didn't smile. The words themselves were enough. Justice didn't roar. It arrived like a whisper she had waited a year to hear. Outside the courthouse, reporters hovered, cameras low but ready. Clint handled the questions while Evelyn walked past them, the autumn air brushing against her face like a release. She hadn't come for spectacle. She had come to reclaim what was rightfully hers. Weeks later, the keys were handed back to her in a plain envelope. The drive to the house felt both foreign and familiar. The front porch looked smaller, stripped of its illusions. She stepped out of the car slowly, staring at the door that once shut her out. The brass knob gleamed in the afternoon light, untouched since the day she'd stood there begging to be let in. Inside, the rooms felt hollow. Furniture gone, walls bare, faint outlines where pictures once hung. The silence pressed heavy, but it wasn't hostile. It was honest. She walked through each room without speaking, her footsteps echoing against the emptiness. The smell of paint lingered from the quick cover-ups her family had tried before leaving, but beneath it, she could still sense the faint trace of her father's cologne. In the living room, sunlight stretched across the floorboards, landing on the old chair her father once sat in. She paused there, her throat tightening, memories flickering one after another. The laughter, the arguments, the quiet evenings that had felt unshakable once. She set her bag down and opened the envelope, pulling out the new keys. They felt heavier than they should. At the doorway, she hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the empty space that was hers again. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman both tired and unyielding. She placed the first key into the new lock, turned it until the bolt clicked, then whispered under her breath, "While everyone's here, go and change the locks." The same words that had broken her life now sealed her freedom. For the first time, the sound of the lock turning didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a promise, to herself, to her father, to the version of her that refused to stay outside in the cold. The days that followed moved quietly. There were no celebrations, no dramatic triumphs, just the sound of repair. Evelyn spent mornings in work gloves, sanding, painting, tightening what had loosened over time. The house had been stripped bare, but the emptiness gave her room to rebuild it her way. She didn't rush. She worked slowly, deliberately, as if each nail she drove into the wall was a heartbeat returning. The garden behind the house had wilted, weeds crawling over the soil where her father once planted rows of marigolds. She knelt there one afternoon with a trowel and a small packet of seeds, the earth still cool under her palms. It wasn't about making it beautiful again. It was about bringing life back to something that had been claimed by neglect. As the first green shoots broke through the dirt, the house began to breathe again. Inside, she placed her father's photograph on the windowsill above the living room radiator. The sunlight caught the frame each morning, casting a soft gold around it. She spoke to him sometimes, not out loud, but in quiet thoughts that rose naturally, about the trial, the garden, the silence that no longer frightened her. It felt like he was still watching, not as a ghost, but as a witness to what she'd finally reclaimed. The rooms filled slowly with warmth again, not from furniture or decoration, but from her presence. She made coffee in the mornings, left the back door open while she painted, played old records her father had kept in the attic. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt honest. It felt hers. Evenings were still, marked by a kind of peace she hadn't known before the chaos. She no longer replayed her mother's words or her brother's silence. Their absence had become a boundary, firm and necessary. She understood now that family wasn't about blood or shared walls. It was about truth, trust, and the people who honored them. Betrayal hadn't destroyed her. It had shown her the limits of forgiveness and the strength of her own resolve. One morning, she stood by the front door, hand resting on the new lock she'd installed herself. The metal gleamed under the sunlight that poured through the window, catching her reflection for just a second. It wasn't just a piece of hardware. It was a line drawn between what was and what would never be again. She turned the bolt once, listening to the clean click echo through the hall. A small smile touched her lips. The sound didn't carry anger or sorrow anymore. It carried closure. Outside, the wind brushed through the garden, stirring the marigolds that had started to bloom again. Inside, the air felt light, steady, whole. The house stood quiet and strong. Like her. Do you think family betrayal can ever truly be forgiven, or does justice mean walking away for good? Share your thoughts below. And if Evelyn's story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that hit where the heart remembers.